Ever get that feeling that affording a home is getting harder and harder? Wonder if it's just you? Well, you're definitely not alone. A brand new consumer survey from across Europe confirms it. So let's get into it and see what the data tells us about this housing squeeze.
All right, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at just how widespread this struggle really is. Then, we'll dig into who's getting hit the hardest, the renters or the owners. After that, things get a little weird, with a puzzling perception in the numbers. We'll figure out what the real roadblock is for first-time buyers, and then wrap up by asking a pretty big question about the whole idea of a forever home.
Okay, so first things first, just how big is this problem? Let's get a real sense of the scale here. How many people across Europe are actually feeling the pinch?
So the researchers went out and asked thousands of people in 6 different countries a really simple but super powerful question.
And the results? Whoa. The headline number is pretty shocking. Get this, more than a quarter of all Europeans, 1 in 4 people with either a mortgage or rent, find it difficult to make their payments. We're not talking about a one-off bad month. We're talking about a consistent, month-after-month struggle.
But you know, that big number, it doesn't tell the whole story, not by a long shot. If we peel back the layers, who's really feeling the heat the most?
Well, the data shows a really clear divide. It's almost immediate. Turns out, it's the renters. In every single country they looked at, renters are struggling way more than homeowners who have a mortgage. And it's not just by a little bit, it's a huge gap. And this chart, wow, it just lays it all out there. Look at the difference. At one end of the spectrum, you've got Dutch homeowners. Only 9% say it's tough. But then look at the other end, Polish renters, a massive 58%. That's almost 6 out of every 10 people struggling. The gap is just enormous.
All right, so stick with me because this is where things get really interesting and kind of weird. What people are actually paying each month doesn't seem to line up with how they feel about the housing market as a whole. There's a real disconnect here.
Check this out. On average, almost 60% of people just flat out believe that housing in their country is unaffordable. And that's their general feeling, right? This is a huge number. And what's wild is that this feeling is strong even in countries where people told the surveyors they weren't personally struggling with their own bills.
So, to really get what's going on, let's zoom in on one country that shows this paradox perfectly, the Netherlands. So, on the one hand, as we just saw, the Dutch have some of the lowest numbers of people actually having a hard time paying their rent or mortgage. You'd look at that and think, okay, things are pretty good over there.
But then, you look at this. A staggering 80% of those exact same people believe housing in their country is generally unaffordable. 80%. That makes them the most pessimistic country in the entire survey. How does that make any sense?
So what is going on? Why the huge disconnect? If the people who are already in their homes aren't really the ones feeling the burn, then who is this crisis actually for? What are they worried about? And here's the answer. The crisis, the real crisis, isn't about paying the mortgage. It's about not being able to get one in the first place. It's about all the people who are locked out, just trying to get a foot on the ladder. And that Dutch data really spells it out for us. People there are the most likely to say that new buyers absolutely need help from their family to buy a home. They're also the most likely to say that the value for money in housing has just cratered. And maybe the most telling point, they're the least likely to believe that your first home can also be your forever home. So this just changes how we have to look at the whole problem, right? The big hurdle isn't making the monthly payment, it's scraping together the massive down payment and just getting in. The crisis is one of access.
Okay, so let's pull all this together. What does this mean for how we even define a housing crisis today?
It means we need a broader definition. The modern housing crisis. It's not just about the monthly squeeze on people who already have a home. It's about the door to homeownership being slammed in the face of so many aspiring buyers. And this quote from the report's author, Sebastian Frank, just hits the nail on the head. He says, "The concern isn't just about the costs people are actually paying, but about the dream they can no longer afford. It's powerful stuff."
And that's the thought I want to leave you with. For generations, that idea of a forever home was part of the social fabric, a sign of stability. So if that dream is slipping out of reach for a whole new generation, what does that mean for the future of our society? What happens next?